No. Hold on, though. Hold on, because this is still a larger a larger thing, because the president ordered flags to be at half-mast, not because of 9/11, but because of Charlie Kirk. I can't believe we forgot. No, I just, like, Trump ordered it until Sunday, and it was openly not about 9/11 at all. He said it was for Charlie Kirk. He extended it for Charlie Kirk. And no, I didn't forget that it's 9/11 today. I already started the conversation, started today by addressing it. Yeah, I did talk to Politico Mag. I can't let fear dictate my life. Hasan Piker on the fallout from Charlie Kirk's killing. Popular leftist streamer gets candid about sparring with a late conservative activist and his own fears about political violence. For all the obvious reasons, hearing that Charlie Kirk has been shot was shocking for Hasan. The progressive influencer Twitch streamer has a massive following, but there was another explanation for why his stomach sank. Not only had he known Kirk, he was set to debate him at the Dartmouth Political Union about young people in politics, left versus right, in just 2 weeks. And soon after, Piker watched his own death threats started to arrive. That is one fear that's always in the back of your mind when you engage in any sort of political advocacy when you do these events. As a recipient of millions of death threats at this point over the years, watching that unfold in real time was devastating. Piker said he would likely wait for the temperature to lower a little bit, but would ultimately keep doing public events. He doesn't want to live in fear. In a wide-ranging conversation, Piker also talked about his worries of a new era of decentralized violence in the United States, why Kirk found an audience among Gen Zers, and whether our political discourse can be healed. So, you cleaned your desk for this interview? No, this is not from the interview. This is, that photo is different. But look, the reason, in a lot of, like, in many respects, the reason why this is, like, so high profile is because he's a high profile person. He's a high profile person that was, like, beloved by a lot of the people that these people see as, like, genuine, like most Republicans see as, like, genuine cult leaders almost. Okay? Do you understand? That's it. That's what it is. It's like a beloved figure for them, a beloved figure of notoriety. Donald Trump gave him credit for securing the Gen Z vote and stuff. Do you understand? They want to give him a Medal of Freedom, and they're gonna pump it. They're gonna pump it. The Republicans are going to talk about this and turn this into a martyrdom and use this for political persecution. 100%. They've already started agitating in that direction. There are major demands coming from prominent Republican figures, friends of Charlie Kirk, and many others who want to punish. They want to punish people. They want to punish liberals. They want to punish the left. They believe the left and liberals are responsible for it. And I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it other than the fact that, like, an instance such as this one is understandable. I mean, it's a tragedy, right? Like, it's understandably a tragedy. It's understandable that tensions would be high in this situation. This is a disgusting environment you have created. I hope you stay safe, because things seem to be heating up due to jokes you allow to fester in places like this. Stop hiding behind Palestine and justify your radical views. God bless you all. See, this is what I mean. It's like, I deal with this shit all the time. It's like pussy ass like fake threats, and also very real ones, right? Like, where it's like, you deserve what's coming for you. Okay. Like, can you imagine if I ran around and was saying that about Charlie Kirk? No, of course not. But that's never the expectation. You can't ever, if you're on the left, you always have to have moral clarity at every given moment. And right-wingers get unironically cry as they hit you, okay? They get to say that they are victimized while they're trying to make you into a actual real victim. It's so crazy. It's so nuts. It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to be the recipient of death threats, no matter what your political ideology is. But it's just like, if you're in this business, as I have been for quite a while, it's just an unfortunate byproduct. You know? That's it. That's it. Patrick Bet David clip. What is this? Calling white Nazis might do it. How dare they? Story time? What do you mean? Like, that's the other side of the story, where people will just be like, hey, man, I can't believe you're calling someone a Nazi. They just want to do National Socialism. They just want to do concentration camps. Why are you calling them a Nazi? They want to do concentration camps for black and brown people. Why would you call them a Nazi for that? And it's like, you're actually the real villain for doing that. You're actually the real villain for saying, well, this is objectively a fascist policy. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. the point I always present to many others is like, let's say someone shoots and kills me. What changed about your life? And I mean, the same goes for Charlie. Someone killed Charlie. Let's say that person was like a leftist or something, right? It's not. There's no evidence for this. But like, did that help you at all? No, it didn't. Like, do you understand? That's why I consistently try to bring people back to argue at the legislative level, to try and make changes, to try and organize, to make changes, you know? Because as I mentioned in this Politico magazine interview as well with Adam Wren, like this environment has been a violent one, right? Both in terms of foreign policy, both in terms of Gaza, but also and this environment is also an incredibly violent one at the domestic level, right? So the more desensitized we become to these issues, the less interested we are in solving some of the underlying material inequities that frustrate people, the more decentralized violence will take place. The more that exact same kind of decentralized violence will take place because people are frustrated and there is no pressure valve for them. And the more the right turns around and says, this one was a trans shooter, this one was a black shooter, it's because of, black supremacy. We got to deal with like, undocumented migrants, all of this and all of that. Like, instead of actually addressing the pain that people feel, okay, that causes this instability, we're just not going to change the trajectory of America. We're just going to keep ourselves over and over and over again and get increasingly more desensitized, increasingly more gruesome. And it's just a shitty environment to live in. That's the most basic way to explain it. It's just a shitty environment to live in. It sucks. Ay, ay, ay. Anyway, he said, I guess we should start off, before we get to the press conference, we should start off with the FBI. So for those of you who don't know, if you were under a rock or something, I don't know, Charlie Kirk, at the age of 31, the founder of Turning Point USA, a right-wing organization that is funded by right-wing institutional donors, who goes around college campuses and was credited by Donald Trump with like securing the Gen Z vote for Donald Trump. Okay. He was shot in the neck at UVU in Utah, and he shortly after being shot in the neck died. Okay. And he was at an event. He died. There was another person that caused some instability at the event, and law enforcement hyper focused on that guy. Meanwhile, the actual shooter, who was potentially above a rooftop 200 yards away, was able to get away. Okay, they were able to get away. They shot and killed Charlie Kirk, and they were able to get away. And in the aftermath of that, they found out that the one guy that was in the crowd was actually just like a known person who just like was experiencing a mental health episode. So instead of releasing him, they basically kept him in prison for obstruction of justice, which is crazy, but they basically cleared him of the not being the shooter. And then they apprehended another suspect who I believe was a dude with an Arab name, but it turns out he was a Heritage Foundation guy, who was just, it feels like they just only apprehended him because he is a dude with an Arab name, I guess, but he's like very clearly, he's a Heritage Foundation guy. He's a Trump supporter. He was there, to watch Charlie Kirk. So they released him as well. They cleared him as well. And now they have officially found and released images of a person of interest in the Charlie Kirk killing. Now, this is a person of interest, so we don't even know if this is actually the person, but like this is the closest we've arrived at whether or not this is the person. Now, one thing that I do want to mention here, however, is that outside of this person of interest, there was another revelation that came out, which I think is perhaps one of the most insane things I've seen with mainstream media in general. Steven Crowder this morning released an exclusive. This morning, my team received an email from an officer at the ATF. The email included a screenshot from what appears to be an internal message describing a cartridges located by an ATF and other law enforcement near the scene of the Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley State University. And what's crazy about it isn't the fact that Steven Crowder actually released this information, right? Because that's the expectation. He's a Rumble guy. Of course, he's going to like go with unverified, unconfirmed reports and really feed into the narrative that like the shooter was probably trans, right? What's actually completely unacceptable is the fact that Wall Street Journal also ran along with this report. And the report is filled to the brim with spectacular misinformation. Like, they were saying that the bullets were engraved with anti-fascist and pro-trans messaging. Okay? Like, how are you engraving the bullets? Like, what the fuck does that even mean? But this kind of misinformation goes crazy. Okay? Kirk was shot and killed at Utah Valley University at Orem, Utah. Mr. Kirk was speaking at the university as a part of the American Comeback Tour. Multiple SLC 1 and 3 agents responded immediately. The suspect fired one shot from an elevated position on a rooftop in the adjacent building on the campus, and surveillance video shows the suspect jumping off and fleeing in the area on foot. ATF and other law enforcement located an older imported Mauser 30 .06 caliber bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel in a wooded area near the campus. The location of the firearm appears to match the suspect's route of travel. The spent cartridge was still chambered in addition to the 3 unspent rounds at the top-fed magazine. All cartridges have engraved wording on them expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology. An emergency trace has been submitted, and ATF SLC working leads generated by the trace. Now, I want you to understand something. Okay? Like, do I think this is a deliberate piece of misinformation, or do I think this was a misunderstanding that obviously got elevated by a charlatan such as Steven Crowder? The point is, it doesn't matter, okay? The New York Times assessment on this was a lot more sober than mine, but they basically said, and I'm going to pull that up real quickly, because this is a spectacular up. The New York Times had a follow-up on this and basically said that this report, according to a preliminary internal report circulated inside the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, federal and local officials recovered ammunition with a rifle that appeared to be engraved with statements expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology. But a senior law enforcement official with direct knowledge of the investigation cautioned that report had not been verified by the ATF analysts, did not match other summaries of the evidence, and might turn out to have been misread or misinterpreted. In fast-moving investigations, such status reports are not made public because they often contain a mixture of accurate and inaccurate information. Now, I don't know if this is the case. I also personally don't even understand how transgender ideology could even be engraved on a bullet, okay? But revealing this information on an unsubstantiated internal report is not doing journalism. It's actually doing the opposite of journalism. Unless you actually see what they were talking about and engage with follow-ups and get the verified analysis, this is unimaginably, this is the type of shit you expect from Steven Crowder. It's not the type of shit you expect from CNN, okay? Which CNN also did. But they said cultural phrases, which a lot of people are mad about as well, because they think that CNN is hiding the truth. A range of phrases related to cultural issues were found scrawled on the rifle and ammunition found in the woods near the conservative activist Charlie Kirk was murdered on Wednesday, according to sources with knowledge of the investigation. Authorities are analyzing those messages as they seek to identify a suspect in the killing, sources said. But it's not yet clear if they point to a motivation in the attack. I don't know if the media environment is responding to the utter panic that they experience from independent resources being first to market, okay? And they just, in an effort to get ahead of other people flanking them out, or other people like leaking certain stories, they just don't do their due diligence and they don't think about how they are supposed to respond in this situation, okay? I don't know. What is this? From one political commentator to another, and then the person you sent me a shoe on head. The last 2 weeks have completely blackpilled me on the left. Why would you ever send this to me, man? This is another person literally saying, I'm leaving the left because the left sucks, when they never were a part of the left. Please, man. Oh my God. You guys like encounter these people without knowing their background, and then you think like, well, this person must be sincere in this moment. Like, it's okay to be a little bit more critical of the shit that you read online, bro. Wow, I can't believe it. This person is leaving the left. This person who was never a part of the left is leaving the left. Wow, how shocking. How many people have done that? How many times have we seen that, you know? Listen, to me, it just feels like there's a lot of apolitical centrist or, you know, sometimes economically populist content creators out there. And there's a real issue with like people that get their notes from people such as this one. Okay. And I think like you're just read a book. I don't know. Just read a book instead of just like getting your notes from like YouTubers, man, please, myself included. Like, Jesus Christ. At least I have like a well-defined ideological point of view that I am not shy about revealing all the time. Anyway, look, I did an interview with Adam Rand, but before we get to the interview and my opinions on it, and the reason why I'm looking at that interview is because it's like it was right after I ended the stream, and you know I was able to like gather my thoughts without chat like spamming me. So I think it's like a decent, I mean, I haven't seen the final product, but it was at the time I thought it was a decent assessment of like the way I feel. So we'll go through it in a second. But right now there is an FBI assessment of who the suspect might be, the person of interest might be. However, this is a fast-paced, fast-moving media environment and media landscape. And while I'm going to show you this, before we even develop any sort of inferences about who the shooter's profile or background might be, it turns out that the FBI has also said that the third suspect now, the third person of interest, is probably not the right guy either. Former FBI Assistant Chris Swecker warns Bureau's very inconsistent description of the person of interest versus the photo they released. There is one thing I think is very inconsistent, and it bothers me. Okay, so it could be the guy, it could not be the guy, it may as well not be the guy as well. It's just, I guess it turns out when you have podcasters who have made a living off of hawking supplements and engaging in conspiracy theories lead the federal law enforcement, the premier federal law enforcement agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, it doesn't help. It only seemingly hurts the way that the Bureau operates. Who could have thought that that would be the case? It turns out, as much as I shit on liberals for their endless posturing about the infallibility of institutions, they're kind of right on this, where they're like, hey, you know, ideologically, you might want a guy who is like maybe aligned to your interests. That's fine. But like, it should still be a competent person, right? Like, because liberals, they will always look for a guy who's like a Republican to put into a position like this, because they think that this will somehow soothe the interests of the cackling hyenas on the right. Like, they'll just stop and be like, well, Jim Comey was a registered Republican his whole life, so I guess this is, the DOJ is truly and the FBI is truly apolitical or whatever. No, it doesn't work that way. But at least those guys are incompetent, you know? At least those guys were competent. You need to have competent people in positions of power. I'm sorry, you know? And if you don't, this kind of shit happens, it seems, okay? That's why I didn't have a lot of issues with, like, Pete Hegseth being in charge of the Department of War now, formerly known as the Department of Defense. Because it's like the output is already very violent, but it seems they're also doing a horrible job with that stuff too. They're just become even more violent than they were before.
Good evening. In the last hour, the FBI has released images of a person of interest in the shooting of Charlie Kirk in Utah. 2 pictures have been released. The FBI says a suspect, a person of college age, is still on the run, and that they found a high-powered rifle. Mr. Kirk, a right-wing influencer, was shot and killed while speaking at a rally at Utah Valley University last night.
We will not stand for what happened yesterday. We are exhausting every lead. We have every officer invested in this, every investigator, every local agency. The outpouring of support from the law enforcement community has been astounding. We are investing everything we have into this, and we will catch this individual. Having walked through the crime scene, through the hallways of this school, through the classrooms, I can't imagine what the people on scene felt as well. A horrific event where some of them barricaded in classrooms, some of them ran in fear. can't overstate the tragedy and the horrific event that yesterday was, and how we will work to bring to justice the actions of one individual or any other individuals that assisted in that. Our state has gone through a lot, and we will come out successful.
This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. So the FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. Now, I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation.
Well, our US correspondent James Matthews has the latest now from Utah.
Almost sounded like an open and shut investigation when the FBI held that 7:30 a.m. news conference this morning. They said they were confident, and there was a confidence in withholding these kind of images. You know, there was no immediate call to the public for help in identifying who he was. So, yeah, I do wonder.
My Walmart's flag is at half-mast today. That's crazy. I mean, look. Tragedy aside, if you're like a black person, if you have loved ones who are undocumented, if you're a brown person, if you are a trans person or you know trans people, like, oh, because it's 9/11. Oh, Jesus. That's why, right? Okay, I was ready to pop off. But Trump is no. Hold on though. Hold on, because this is still a larger a larger thing, because the president ordered flags to be at half-mast, not because of 9/11, but because of Charlie Kirk. I can't believe we forgot. No, I just, like, Trump ordered it until Sunday, and it was openly not about 9/11 at all. He said it was for Charlie Kirk. He extended it for Charlie Kirk. And no, I didn't forget that it's 9/11 today. I already started the conversation, today by addressing it. Anyway, my point is, if you're any of these marginalized groups that have been like actively dehumanized by Charlie Kirk, or like the right wing broadly, and you see a lot of like institutional liberals currently talking about like lowering the temperature aside, like just genuinely talking about the background of Charlie Kirk and like who he was and what he meant to so many Americans, all this stuff, like, you got to feel a little worried, right? You got to feel a little worried that like there are just these people just like don't give a shit about you at all. Because like my expectation isn't for you know, Ezra Klein to come out and be like, R.I.P. Bozo, smoking on that Charlie Kirk pack or some shit, right? Like that's not my expectation at all. That would be insane, right? And of course, if you're in a position of prominence, you shouldn't do that anyway, right? Because you know, you do have some influence, but the point I'm making is that like when you go above and beyond to almost like whitewash their perspective and their political output, when this is a political operative, you kind of come across as you're either signing off on their worldview, right? Or you just don't care, right? Like you either are saying, I like what he was doing, I like what his worldview looks like, or I don't care enough about the dehumanization that he partook in, right? This has got to be, I mean, this has got to be a weird moment for a lot of people. Look, I'm in this. I'm too close to the situation for me to look at it as anything but there has definitely been a I just, when I saw the eulogies coming from CNN and Fox News and how close they were in the language and the verbiage used, like, it kind of frustrated me a little bit. Like, you're supposed to be clear. You're supposed to be honest. There's no reason to be dishonest. And I even tweeted about this earlier as well, and people were obviously screaming bloody murder in my replies in the aftermath of this. But like, I tweeted two things. I said, shameful for the New York Times obit of Charlie Kirk, said Julia Steinberg. Mr. Kirk was so vocal in his willingness to spread unsupported claims and outright lies. He said that drug hydroxychloroquine was 100% effective in treating the virus, which is not. That Twitter temporarily barred him in early March 2020, but the move only added to his notoriety and seemed to support his claim that he was muzzled by a liberal elite. Now, what's interesting about this is like that's the least offensive thing Charlie Kirk had said, right? Like in terms of distasteful things, in terms of like objectively violent statements and dehumanizing rhetoric, like that's the least offensive thing, right? And I said, this is all but a fraction of Charlie Kirk's honest perspective. He was quite proud of his positions. He defended them vociferously. Not sure why you'd find them distasteful to mention. Can't you paint any person in a bad light? You absolutely can. You absolutely can. But my expectation in this moment is for people to be sober in their analysis and be honest in their analysis, right? Like my expectation is not for the New York Times to be like, he deserved it or whatever. Obviously, I don't believe that either. But my expectation is for them to, at the very least, reflect a little bit about his positions, because this is the moment where you are. This is the moment where you are introducing Charlie Kirk to a much broader audience. Like, reflect on his real legacy. And Matt Walsh said some stuff as well. He said, all Charlie Kirk ever did was have conversations with people. He didn't insult anyone. He made arguments. He debated. He wasn't an extremist in any way. Everyone who knew Charlie personally loved him. That's the kind of guy he was. They still killed him. I'm furious and heartbroken in equal measure. I cannot put into words how I feel. Maybe that is for the best. To which I responded with, Charlie Kirk opposed the Civil Rights Act, called George Floyd a scumbag, said he'd be worried about black pilots, and that he forced his daughter to carry a pregnancy to term if she was raped. He shouldn't have been killed, but he was definitely an extremist. Like, the problem is Matt Walsh doesn't think Charlie Kirk's an extremist. And the problem is most Republicans don't think these positions are extreme positions. Okay? So in a moment like this, when tensions are very high, for mainstream institutions to also launder his reputation or his output and rewrite his legacy after years and years of reflecting on it, after years and years of honest coverage about what he had said, down to the wire, down to the very last moment, I think is disappointing. This is crazy. You think this? You think it's crazy that I think that someone saying that their daughter, if they were raped in a hypothetical, their daughter, if they were raped, that you would force them to carry a pregnancy to term is not an extreme position? Go ahead. Have that argument with anyone around the country. There are a lot less people who would agree with that position than there are people who would be repulsed by said position. He has a 10-year-old daughter. Yeah. I can't link Osita Nwanevu's blue sky take for you, but he said, and he is totally correct, and that's what my frustrations are a little bit as well. My sense is that most Americans had not heard of Charlie Kirk until yesterday. The first and perhaps only thing they're going to hear about him from the most trusted and important voices in American politics is that he was a model and constructive participant in good faith political discourse. That's crazy, because when you stake your reputation on a statement such as that one, you're signing off on all of this. You're signing off on all of this, and you're turning around and you're saying to the people that are listening to you that those are a part of the honest political discourse. You can say that this is a tragedy, that this is supposed to have no place. This is supposed to have no place in any country's political discourse. Like, it's true. It's true. That's why we live in a civilization, okay? You don't have to demonstrate empathy for someone who does not have empathy for you, but you can still look at the situation and reflect on it and realize that this is a dangerous, unstable environment, okay? An environment that absolutely requires legislative solutions. Look, the State Department indicated it would review the legal status of immigrants praising, rationalizing, or making light of Charlie Kirk's fatal shooting. What are we doing? But yes, Osita's take is correct on this. He covered Ezra Klein's New York Times article on this. He said, "This is frankly incredible to me. Would Klein have said Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA was practicing politics in exactly the right way this time last week? Exactly the right way? Really? Would that have been a broadly accepted characterization of left of center? You can dislike much of what Kirk believed in. The following statement is still true. Kirk was practicing politics in exactly the right way. He was showing up to campuses and talking with anyone who would still talk to him. He was one of the era's most effective practitioners of persuasion. When the left thought its hold on the hearts and minds of college students was nearly absolute, Kirk showed up again and again to break it. Slowly then, all at once, he did. College-age voters shifted sharply right in the 2024 election. This did not happen because of Charlie Kirk. This happened because of the anger and resentment that people had towards the administration that was in charge leading up to the election and their inability to address their economic anxieties. Okay? That's it. That's it. Charlie Kirk was an accelerant, certainly, but yeah, you can take him out. You can take her out. But to make this false notion that he was like single-handedly responsible for this betrays the reality that is unfolding in front of us in real time. If Charlie Kirk was singularly responsible for the Gen Z turn towards Trump, and it wasn't more a systemic shift born out of, okay, guys, please be quiet. 1 second. Thank you. You can't hear them, but I can. There's a lot of commotion in my house right now. So, where was I? What the fuck was I saying? Oh, if this wasn't a systemic shift, with younger people responding, if this wasn't a systemic shift with younger people responding to the existing administration at the time, the Biden administration, and their inability to address some of these economic pressures that they were experiencing, and them falsely assuming that Trump would present an alternative vision that would be better potentially. If you think that it was something beyond that, Charlie Kirk, until yesterday, was still very much an operator in the field. He was still going to college campuses. So why did that Gen Z swing back happen already? Because in the first 9 months of Trump's administration, Gen Z swung wildly back towards an antagonistic position against Donald Trump. This is not only a bad political assessment, but it's also a dangerous one. Exactly. Exactly. This isn't to say that Charlie Kirk wasn't impactful. Of course he was, for sure. But he was taking advantage of the systemic forces, the systemic shift that was happening broadly, because he was still very much right there. He was very much still in operation, and yet the Gen Z attitude swung directly back in the opposite direction and became antagonistic to Donald Trump. This is inconsistent. This is bad analysis, and it is inconsistent with reality. It is inconsistent with the New York Times Siena polls that just came out this past week, reflecting on Gen Z attitude that is antagonistic to Trump now. Anyway, and it's also incorrect in terms of like, this is broad persuasion, or these people are actually using the field of debate to arrive at a truth. Like, everybody knows that this is content. You're cutting content and you're doing propaganda. Okay? There is a reason why Charlie would pick the targets that he picked. And it's not Charlie who started this process. It's not Charlie Kirk who was responsible for, the college campus debate field. Ben Shapiro did it all the time as he elevated his status as well, taking a bunch of hysterical college campus freshmen who have never been in front of a microphone, in front of a large audience, and like ritualistically humiliating them so you can make SJW-owned compilations, is not actually arriving at the truth, arriving at any sort of serious truth through testing your ideas in the field of battle. It's just propaganda. Shapiro did it. Steven Crowder did it. Also, very famously, the whole "change my mind," that was Steven Crowder, right? So the assessment here of the assessment here of debate and why Charlie Kirk was doing these debates is also false. Is also built around a falsehood. When the left thought it's holding hard, slowly, then all at once, the college-age voter shifted rapidly. That was not all Kirk's doing, but he was central in laying the groundwork for it. That is fair. He says that's not all Kirk's doing. I did not know Kirk, and I am not the right person to eulogize him, but I envied what he built. A taste for disagreement is a virtue in a democracy. Liberalism could use more of his moxie and fearlessness. In the inaugural episode of his podcast, Governor Gavin Newsom of California hosted Kirk, admitting that his son was a huge fan. What a testament to Kirk's project. Osita continues. He says, Charlie Kirk was not engaged in respectful political debate. Charlie Kirk condemns Zohran Mamdani for how he disgustingly eats rice. We in the West value cleanliness. We have utensils. Charlie Kirk says it doesn't feel right for London and New York City to have Muslim mayors. This is not respectful debate. It's just not. It's just pure racism being intellectualized and then being washed over by an intellectual giant such as Ezra Klein amongst the liberal intelligentsia, of course. Ezra Klein is a revered figure, is a respected figure by liberals. He has a prominent spot at the New York Times, and he's using that prominent spot to basically wash over a whole bunch of completely racialized screeds as though this was a reasonable disagreement that people had. Make no mistake, however, this is like the solution to this is not gun violence. Obviously, that is insane. Okay. The difference, of course, here is that, yes, as someone also brought this up, if he said this about Jews, Ezra would not have this opinion of him. You know, that's also true. As someone who can tonally be incendiary, I think there's a role for incendiary in politics. And I am certainly not a stranger to an incendiary tone myself, as you guys know. You know, I have some of my highlights and lowlights. It's filled to the brim with incendiary statements. Okay. And yes, Charlie Kirk has said anti-Semitic shit as well. It doesn't matter. He's super pro-Israel. And for a lot of these guys, it doesn't matter if you say stuff like that about Jews. Okay. Calm down. As long as you're pro-Israel. And Charlie Kirk certainly was unimaginably pro-Israel. And I have an assessment about all this. I have an assessment about all the other conspiracy theories that are running around as well. Okay. Just stop posting your RP Bozo shit. There's already a Canary Mission style Charlie Kirk Death Celebrators website up and has doxed over 10,000 people so far. No matter how you feel, have some self-preservation, please. It's not worth it to say the same dumb shit others have already said. Exactly. Like, you need to have a little bit of messaging discipline and operate from a position of self-preservation. You think you have anonymity online. You do not. You do not. These guys are literally out for blood. They're looking for anything and everything they can get out of the situation. While everybody understands that, like, I did not engage in any sort of celebration whatsoever and even told people not to do so for self-preservation purposes especially. There are still people who are upset with my analysis on, like, Alex Jones. Like, they're looking for anything that they can hold on to say, like, you are not sufficiently sad about this. You understand? They're using anything and everything they can under the sun to try and punish their ideological enemies. Anyway, as Osita says, as someone who can be tonally incendiary, I think there's a role for incendiary in politics. My problem with Kirk wasn't his tone, but the content of what he said, which I believe was immoral. All that aside, I wonder how readily mainstream voices would canonize a dead leftist speaking in this register as having engaged in respectful debate. Of course not. Of course not. If the equivalent of Charlie Kirk on the opposing side is someone like myself, if I were to be assassinated under gruesome circumstances similar to Charlie Kirk, they would be celebrating it. They would literally be advocating to release the shooter if he were ever apprehended to begin with. They would call him a hero. They would say, we need more of that. We need more. We need more of this kind of death. Let's be real. Of course, if the right-wing pundits goading listeners towards violence, as Kirk himself did, get their way, we might find out soon enough. Exactly. The New York Times comment section is the best moderate publication in America. He was a traveling salesman, not interested in debate or listening to ideas, but performative showmanship. The spewing of vitriolic hate towards outgroups disguised in the rhetoric of conversations is nothing to be commended. This is true. This is going to get so out of context. What are you talking about? So you make it sound if there's a massive witch hunt going on in America. Chatter, are you around? Are you alive? Is your brain functioning? Have you not seen this? Did you not listen to Donald Trump's own words where he said we're waging a war against the left and liberals in general, and we're going to punish them? Anyone and everyone that is responsible for this, that has ever, like, called a Republican correctly a Nazi or whatever, is liable. And this is, of course, on top of the existing witch hunt against migrants or people suspected of being migrants. How severe do you think it is what I meant? I don't know, man. I guess the severity of it is dependent on your position of privilege, your position of comfort. Like, for example, when Mahmoud Khalil was apprehended, when numerous pro-Palestinian writers and student activists were apprehended black bag and threatened with deportation, did you think that was a severe escalation and a severe violation of the First Amendment? Or do you think it was just simply, people are just like grossly exaggerating this? Perhaps because you don't think that this would ever impact you in a meaningful fashion. So yeah, interesting. The right way in politics to spread hateful comments against Americans you don't like, or to condone gun deaths to have the freedom to bear arms. His death was sad, but don't sugarcoat his actions. That's my assessment as well. Like to be gunned down in that way at the age of 31 is horrifying. It's a tragedy. It is. And it's unacceptable in American politics, and it's unacceptable across the board in all politics. There is a reason why we live in a society where there is a social contract that we abide by. This is ripping apart the social fabric, okay? But that social fabric has been unwound for the past multiple years of unimaginable gun violence that Americans have experienced. That social fabric has been ripped apart by all the death and destruction that we deal overseas. And that death and destruction has violent consequences here on the home front as well. The fascist boomerang, okay? And in the absence of any sort of serious considerations of how to solve some of these issues, that decentralized form of violence is only going to continue. And I think liberals, instead of taking a sober approach here and trying to engage with the structural inequities to address these issues, are simply just responding, and they're responding in the same way that Republicans are responding, by hailing Charlie Kirk as a champion, a hero, laundering his reputation, making it seem as though the way that they have covered this, the way that Charlie Kirk operated was actually good.
I need you all to realize
what is this?
that debate will never save us. And the reason you have all of these left debate bros crying over Charlie Kirk dying is because they were actually buddy-buddy and everything was actually just a game to them. This demonic rhetoric that actually causes harm to people of color, to minorities, to actual people, real, genuine violence and harm that is enacted through rhetoric that these people would...
I mean, I've been saying this. I've been saying that, like, realize how everyone hates Hasan Piker? Yeah, because he's not friends with any of them and they hate him for it. I'm reminded when Hasan Piker was at the DNC, Charlie tried to dab him up like they were buddies, and Hasan was so confused and ignored him. It absolutely is a game to the debate bros. They do not seriously care about the issues they speak about and rhetoric, or their rhetoric has on the masses. Like, none of this is to say that it's a good thing that this happened, okay? I'm not doing that, obviously. But I do think I do think that it's a disservice to the public if all of these trusted liberal institutions are engaging in the same kinds of obituaries that you hear from Sean Hannity. Kind of weird how everyone turned on you. It's not weird, man. It's not. It's just, it's an expectation. A lot of people, if you believe that there is an ideological goal here, if there is a higher purpose here, then you don't give a shit about petty disagreements because it comes across as narcissistic. If you have a broader ideological goal in mind, even when others are attacking you nonstop and in increasingly more belligerent ways, what do I always say? What do I always do? I have a policy, a principle of not actively attacking those to my left flank because, one, I understand that we don't have any power in this country, okay? And two, that these guys are ultimately on the same cause. They're directionally fighting for the same issues. Bro, you literally say you're against the death penalty and even advocate for everyone, including Nazis, to get healthcare? Of course. Of course. That's true. I've never seen this much Hasan hate over ever on Twitter until now. I mean, it's fine. It's all right. This is not new. It's just increased in its intensity. That's all this is. That's all it is.
Create and spew all over the world And then the left guys would come in and believe that they're saving the world, doing justice, but in reality, it was all just in game to them. That's why they're crying because he's gone. Because it was all in game. Debate was never about...
This nerd is trying to sound scary. You had a Houthi on your live stream. Instead of calling American heroes extremists, you should return to your native Turkey before we prosecute you for material support of a designated foreign terrorist organization. Come on, man. Come on, dude. Please, please. You are such a pussy. Like, do you feel like a big man? You're like, hey, man, I'm going to get daddy to prosecute you. I'm going to get daddy to prosecute you. Oh, I don't like it. Assuming such an interview would be material support doubtful, Houthis were not even a foreign terrorist organization at the time of the interview. I understand tensions are high, but maybe you can stop calling for baseless criminal prosecutions of your political enemies. Okay. Okay, we got a liberal lawyer defending me. This is a former Destiny Orbiter, liberal lawyer. It's just, like, this is... I expect this from the right, which Will Chamberlain is from the right. But what I don't like is when I see people who present themselves as like liberal figures. Okay? I do not expect this from people who present themselves as liberals online, you know, like Ethan Klein or the Losers Brigade, right? Like the people who present themselves as like centrists, apolitical people. They do this exact same thing. They use the exact same language. They demand the exact same criminal prosecution. And it's like, it's ridiculous. Like, are you Steven Crowder? Like, what the fuck are you? Will Chamberlain, not Wilt. Did I say Wilt? I've seen multiple TikToks of people celebrating his death and saying they unfollowed left-wing people who were saying this shouldn't have happened. I truly don't get how to reckon with that. It's fine, dude. Tensions are high. What do? You know? I think people need to let go of petty disagreements that they have. Anyway, I just think to myself, when like, how do so many Americans feel when they see, when they are aware? Like, there's a reason why, like, TikTok's response to Charlie Kirk from liberals and leftists alike has been very different than I think, like, all of the other mainstream news outlets, because that's where Charlie Kirk actually found a massive audience. But because of that, that's where Charlie Kirk was also hated severely, right? Because they know his takes. They've seen his takes, right? Those same positions that garnered a lot of attention from young conservatives all around the country were exactly the reasons why that dehumanizing language, for example, that he used all the time, is the reason why a lot of people actually were very frustrated with him and maybe even despised him, right? But a lot of these people are completely oblivious to Charlie Kirk's worldview, and they are being presented a totally false image, okay? Disagreeing with you does not mean being right-wing or far-right. I'm Norwegian, voting left, which basically means more left than you even understand. Your takes are largely dogshit, polarizing, and borderline crazy, Hasan. Thank you, goodbye. Explain what you mean. Explain what you mean. Because there's never people always say stuff like this, but they never actually follow through. They don't actually say, like, this is what I disagree with you. This, I think, is very polarizing. And then when they do, if in the random circumstance where they do actually reveal their position, it's not even my position. It's just one that another person has negatively framed that they've been duped into believing. Like the most improper, the most negative framing that you could ever hear. Something like what Will Chamberlain was advancing here. Okay? It's additionally funny for a Norwegian leftist who fancies himself to be a left voter in Norway to say this about someone like myself, because on the legislative front, a lot of the things that I advocate for is basically trying to get the United States of America to have modest social democratic reforms that reflect the Norwegian social democracy that is also withering away in front of the eyes of the Norwegian left. So, you know, like nationalizing the entirety of our extraction industry, as is the case with Norway, for example. The entirety of the energy and the forestry in Norway is nationalized. This is great. I would like to do that here. Will Chamberlain, the guy calling for D Workwear and Mehdi Hasan to be deported because he disagrees with them, is a trust fund kid who assumed control over a significant amount of money at 25, failed to fulfill his dream as a financier, and now works for the most shameful culture war factory slop job, and was chilling with Andrew Tate. And a bunch of other groypers, as a matter of fact. Interesting. That was the guy who was like, you interviewed a Houthi. Wait until we destroy you. My dad just openly posted saying they're done with passive action and that myself and others need to be dealt with. It's fucking heartbreaking. Okay, this is a great example, right? You're hearing this from a lot of conservatives. They're very, very angry right now. They're very agitated. They're always agitated. Agitation is a part of their politics in general. That's what it is to be a reactionary, right? But like, what's he gonna do? That's your dad. Is he gonna do anything? Probably not. Expand on that assessment and you will arrive at a more comfortable, just the more likely outcome of all of this. Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of messages like this one. You killed the one man that was willing to come to you peacefully and debate. The talking is over. Like, everybody out here, everybody's basically operating like an anime villains. You know, everybody is like Sephiroth posting on the timeline, like, oh, it's time. Your time is going to come. This is like, it reminds me of like the 2016 era, you know, Antifa, what's his name? Grimmy, whatever, the Philadelphia logo, like, you know, young college freshmen who first were learning about like Marxist-Leninism, gritty posting. It reminds me of that. Of course, the difference is like young college freshmen who have never shot a gun are not as serious about doing this kind of decentralized violence as you know, divorced dads with an arsenal of weapons and a willingness to go out and you know, do this kind of violence. So it's a little bit more serious when, you know, MAGA family annihilators actually make these sorts of threats. It still hopefully will not amount to, anything super consequential. I hope. That is my hope. Anyway, we are living in Eddington for sure. The issue on the people on the left are, the issue is people on the left who are saying him being killed is a good thing. Brother, wake up. Do you not see what's going on here? How do you not understand that this is the exact same thing, but on the other side, and this side actually has the ears of the administration who is saying similar things, at least on the point of political persecution against political dissidents, okay? A bunch of random TikTokers and a bunch of random people being like, I hated this guy, I'm celebrating his death, is not the same as like an administration that is going to now use as an opportunity to literally engage in political persecution and maybe even more, okay? As a matter of fact, the people cheering on the left are doing so because of their lack of power. It's a recognition of not having any power to change anything at all, any of the structural inequities. Do you understand? That's who cheers for this kind of thing. People who have completely lost hope that any sort of real, tangible, material improvements will happen for them. This is what I mean when I say the social contract has exploded in front of our eyes. Do you get it? The social contract is gone. People do not feel like they can ever own a home. The American dream is not happening for anybody. And that causes a lot of enmity, that causes a lot of anger, that causes a lot of resentment. And in that resentment, there are those on the right who redirect their anger and animosity, led by, shepherded by even the likes of Charlie Kirk and, you know, the Trump administration in general, towards marginalized groups. And the people on the left look to these structural inefficiencies, recognize their inability to change them, and then basically sit around and celebrate when stuff like this happens. Okay? But to say that the deck is not stacked against the left and liberals in general as well in a situation like this is so stupid. You are denying abject reality that is right in front of your eyes. Okay? You're getting mad at a bunch of people that you have presented in your mind as like the real enemy here on the left for doing something that Republicans have never stopped doing. Okay? Never, ever, ever. They're doing it right now. They're doing it right now. Do you understand? Like, you're over here saying, well, you know, it's because the real issue is a bunch of leftists are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. Okay, well, there's a bunch of right-wingers here saying, like, we have to start killing these leftists. That's why I said all these, like, prominent right-wing figures online, key search George Floyd, key search Hasan Piker on the accounts, key search, keyword search any high-profile Democrat that has been assassinated, for example, to get a better understanding of what their opinions are. Keyword search trans. if you want to understand like what their positions are when it comes to political violence and how much appetite they have for political violence, you will realize that like the only reason why they're saying this right now is because they're saying this right. Oh yeah, Paul Pelosi, Pelosi's husband. There are a lot of this use flying around here. Look, they lectured us about the dangers of the right. Then they cheered when Charlie Kirk died. It's a sickness. This you. Congrats, George Floyd, 5 years sober. A victim of police violence. Like, ridiculous. This is abject cruelty. It is utterly ridiculous. And it's so ridiculous because like they say this is comedy. When you turn around and get mad about this kind of statement, they say, what's wrong? I'm just doing comedy. Okay? But if you do the same, they go, you need to be murdered. You need to be prosecuted at the very least or murdered. Comedy is legal now, right? Remember, here's another example. Yeah. Have some class and respect for the dead. Imagine if it was your father that was shot while the whole media is making fun of it. Bye-bye, Gaza, he says. Again, so many examples. Yeah. Congratulations to George Floyd on being 5 years sober today. That's comedy. Charlie Kirk's death will not be in vain. I'll be spending my night making everyone I find online who celebrates his death famous. So prepare to have your whole future professional aspirations ruined if you're sick enough to celebrate his death. I'm going to make you wish you never opened your mouth. These people need to be condemned in society, and there must never be a place for these people to gather without facing the shame of their behavior. That's it. Charlie Kirk said black people were better off in slavery and subjugation before the 1940s. It was bad and it was evil, but they committed less crimes. Thousands. Yeah, he did.
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 black men, women, and children were killed in violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but I guess
racial terror permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been
that
in the
affected
last 80 years.
The generational psyche of an entire group of people?
No, I'm sure it did. I'm not discounting that. I'm just this shows they were actually better in the
somewhat decent statements from a lib. There are violent extremists on the left, but they are not in charge of the party. You can find them on social media, not in the halls of power. The violent extremists on the right are in Congress, on courts, sitting in the Oval Office. Every single major Democratic politician condemned the murder of Charlie Kirk. Meanwhile, before even knowing who the shooter was, the Republican president gave a speech calling for violence against the Democrats. There are mass thugs running through the streets, dragging people out at cars at gunpoint. There was an attempted violent coup at the Capitol building brought on by the president himself, and Charlie Kirk too, by the way. Make no mistake. That's another part of the thing. That's another part of this puzzle that's like so interesting. Liberals who only care about January 6th, I guess, forgot Charlie Kirk literally paid for buses. Charlie Kirk bussed people to the Capitol. Turning Point USA bussed people to the Capitol to participate in the insurrection. So it's even shit that they care about that they seemingly don't care about, right? Like, even if it's someone like Ezra Klein maybe doesn't give a shit about all of the dehumanizing language that has come from many conservative figureheads, including Charlie Kirk, right? Including but not limited to Charlie Kirk. Maybe you don't care about it. Maybe you think like, well, that's just like political disagreements. It's fine, right? But you care about January 6th. That's like a thing that you care about. That's what you talk about all the time. Dehumanizing language says you, brother, I have said over and over again that I am a firm and committed advocate for universal health care and universality in general in all of my legislative items, including but not limited to Nazis as well. If you cannot comprehend that, I don't know what else to tell you, okay? Always and forever. It's just that you don't know that. You don't understand that. You don't care to understand that. You've been primed into thinking that I'm this like evil person, and it's fine. But if you were to actually expand, if you were to actually watch a clip that you saw out of context and, watch the next 20, 30, 40 seconds of it, you would probably get a better understanding of what I truly believe. Some years of lead video to prepare the Americans for what's coming could be appropriate. Yes. Anyway, hell, he threatened to invade an American city 4 days ago. I'm genuinely sad the man died, not because I agreed with a word he said, but because he was a misguided person who himself was caught up in the culture of violence. He deserved to be shouted down for his backwards ideas, not murdered. The most sickening part of this whole ordeal is the excitement you see in Republicans, how quickly they move past any respect for the dead, any reflection on the environment they help foster, straight into who should be murdered next. This is actually a pretty solid assessment. Did you see Pedo Troll was kind of blaming it on you? Yes, dude. He is in a very weird environment himself. I think he's like trying to like design like a reasonable liberal position for himself where he just like actively says like the real evil in this country is not the Trump administration or reactionary conservatism, but instead is Hasan Abi Piker and others like him. It's the Twitter leftists that he thinks are the primary villains here. Pedotroll doesn't really narrow it down. Pedotroll is the former username of my former podcast co-host Ethan Klein. Okay, he was outed as having a early Reddit account where he would just like engage in what he said was pedophilic trolls. He called himself that. They don't even know who the shooter is, yet they're ignoring the obvious marks of a professional killer who clearly had high-trained military background and the fact that these guys tend to be right-wing nut jobs with an obscure axe to grind. But they've already given him, and we all know it's a him, not a her, an identity. The faceless embodiment of everything they hate and a fear with a clearly coordinated messaging campaign to call him a leftist. So it's clear that what they want is not peace. They want a justification for more violence. They want a bloody shirt they can point to and say, see, this is why there are thugs in the streets in mass pulling people from cars at gunpoint. This is why we must end the American experiment in democracy. And the most pathetic part of it all is that none of it is necessary. Violent crime is down everywhere. This is all invented. And it was done so to protect the pursuit of power of one man, a dim-witted child rapist who became a violent extremist simply because selling his dark vision of America was the only way his corrupt, soulless ass could stay out of jail. Great take from Michael Gillette, by the way. It's true. Everything he said here is true. While I have ideological disagreements with liberals, like this is correct. This is one of those instances where it's just correct. It's objectively correct. That's it. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I think it is the most important thing to be honest in this moment, to be honest about your assessment, to be clear about your morality, but to be honest about your assessment of where we are, okay? Where we are right now in this day and age in the political discourse environment that we exist in, okay? This isn't just Trump, though. It's the entire right-wing movement. Yes, Trump is a beacon of modern reactionary attitudes. He is just a singular force that summarizes everything. Hannity, the left has given us 10 nonstop years of rage and hatred and a vile language. It is undeniable. It is poisoning the minds of many people in our country. I said all of modern conservatism is about making up a false reality to get mad at and then getting endlessly mad about said false reality. That's it. Wow, the left is really violent in their rhetoric. Why? Because they say conservatives who dehumanize entire swaths of the population are being brutal and ruthless and violent in their words. That's the real violence. Everything always goes back to liberalism. Everyone is a liberal. Sean Hannity is behaving as a liberal here when he says words are violence, except when it's directed against me, as opposed to the violent rhetoric that I traffic in on a nightly basis, okay? And the summarization of this is basically, it's not the racist thing that I said that is actually up. You calling me racist for the racist things that I said, that's the real problem. That's it. This is the guy who said you should be blackbagged is deleting his post apparently and blocking people who called him out. I mean, that's not surprising. This is the same principle that I have maintained for years. At the peak of campus culture, cancel culture, and free speech panic, when everyone kept pointing the finger at the left and liberals in general for engaging in cancel culture and all these narratives, and certainly a lot of people were doing that, you know who was still the most successful group, the most successful ideological movement that was able to cancel people, were able to actually successfully burn books? It was the right. It was always the right. But they were able to market themselves as brave warriors engaging in the act of cancel culture for patriotism, a higher order, a higher priority that actually makes sense. There has never been a moment in U.S. history, all the way from the Red Scare, McCarthyist trials, all the way down to modern, contemporary American politics, where it wasn't the right that was actively canceling people, actively suppressing speech, actively silencing their opposition. Okay? That has always been the case. And we're seeing that right now. Wow, you are really delusional. There is evidence for this. You have nothing. Go look at organizations like FIRE, who dedicate, and they're right-wing organizations for the most part, who dedicate their entire purpose to tracking where the cancellations are taking place and where the book bannings are taking place. Okay? I'll give you the greatest example. Conservatives say liberals want to do cancel culture. They hate free speech. But then it's the conservatives that turn around and successfully implement initiatives by claiming things are CRT, by claiming things are woke, by claiming things are DEI, and then successfully stopping the dissemination of truth in our schools. It is the conservatives that have, on the one hand, played the victim consistently, and on the other hand, actively stopped certain educational initiatives from taking place. Do you understand? Anti-woke is literally just a repackaged attempt to do censorship. That's all that is. And people don't understand that. The average person does not understand that. For conservatives, it's usually just projection. Do you not understand that? How is that confusing to you? And the more liberal institutions capitulate to this right-wing framing and right-wing grievances, oftentimes whipped up in a moral panic, the worse things are going to get, okay? Yeah. Oh, look, yesterday the right had a coordinated campaign of lies to stir up violence, and here it is. Of course, immediately bomb threats are being issued. HBCUs are shutting off campuses. They're on lockdown. 7 of them, I believe, at this point. The DNC headquarters had a bomb threat issued to them.
It says this afternoon there was a bomb threat to the DNC HQ that was determined to not be credible by the U.S. Capitol Police. Out of an abundance of caution, Capitol Police is conducting an interior sweep of the building. As DNC Chairman Ken Martin has said, political violence in every form has no place in our country. We are grateful to the U.S. Capitol Police and DNC building security for responding quickly. It says this afternoon there was a bomb threat.
Anyway, why are we abdicating the personal responsibility of Kirk and acting like he's some right-wing avatar forced to be so because of his conditions? Wait, what? Where is that coming from? For me, a list of Trump supporters who killed or tried to kill Democrats and opponents of Trump in recent years, since the right are now claiming all political violence is from the left. Here, this is on Zateo. Here are the actual facts for those with conveniently short memories. The man who targeted and killed Democratic state lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark in their home in Minnesota in June was a Trump supporter. Far-right evangelical televangelist pastor, as a matter of fact, and a security contractor. The man charged with the attempted assassination of Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro in April was a Trump supporter. He was also literally a paranoid schizophrenic as well. The man convicted of orchestrating a series of shootings at the homes of 4 Democratic elected officials in New Mexico in 2022 was a Trump supporter. The man who tried to kidnap the Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and assaulted her husband Paul in 2022 was a Trump supporter. Republicans celebrated that, including Donald Trump Jr. Okay? If you recall. So when they turn around and say, like, we got to really tone down the political violence, or even moving away from that, turn down the political violence to directly doing more political violence, saying, like, we have to punish the left. They did this, without any evidence to suggest that is what's going on. The very same people that are engaging in that were also very much making jokes about this shit, okay? The men who wanted to hang Mike Pence on January 6th were Trump supporters. The man who killed the son of Obama-appointed district judge Esther Salas in 2020 was a Trump supporter. The men who were convicted of trying to kidnap Michigan's Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020 were Trump supporters. The man who sent pipe bombs to the homes of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and other top Democrats in 2018 was a Trump supporter. The man who killed left-wing activist Heather Heyer after driving his car into a crowd of counter-protesters in Charlottesville in 2017 was a Trump supporter. There are a million different versions of this in terms of all the right-wing, far-right mass shootings that have taken place, by the way. Okay? It is ridiculous. Black and white much? What do you mean? It is ridiculous. The notion that it's actually, leftists that are so violent and constantly doing violence is just not true. It's misinformation, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Because it actually corresponds to the feelings of a lot of people, right? It corresponds to people's personal feelings, and therefore it's fine. And this list is so short as opposed to the much larger list if you were to factor in a lot of the far-right white supremacist acts of violence that have taken place. Even the guy who shot Trump, Thomas Crooks, was a registered Republican. Ryan Ruth was definitely libbed up. He was a NATO lib by the point of his, attempted assassination. Having said that, he had literally voted for Trump in the prior years. What are we doing? All of you are weird, not gonna lie. Okay. No more vague gesturing. Just point to what you take issue with, please. We can't have a normal conversation if you just go, oh, I don't like what you're saying. Okay, yeah. I don't like a lot of things that I hear on a daily basis. But at the very least, I try to address the issues that I have with people rather than just like vaguely gesturing in the direction of discontent for one reason or another, you know? People love presenting Charlie Kirk as this like beacon of a debate, a beacon of discourse, even though he used debates and discourse in an effort to basically cut, right-wing propaganda. But if you want to appeal to that notion, then at least the very least you can do is explain what your position is. Okay? Looks like this could be the type of shirt a person of interest in Charlie Kirk shooting had on. Land of the free, home of the brave. Yeah, this is what it looked like. But I don't know. I mean, it's very clear that it's an American flag and an eagle in between, for sure. But then again, we don't know. How do you justify debating him? Justify? I don't need to justify debating anybody. What do you mean? Charlie Kirk is an incredibly powerful individual in the Trump administration. Okay? Charlie Kirk was an incredibly powerful figure in the Trump administration. Okay? I don't believe that debates are the end-all be-all, and it's mostly pseudo-intellectual sparring for entertainment with quippy one-liners to ritualistically humiliate your interlocutors in the quote-unquote marketplace of ideas. Having said that, there is some utility to it, especially when the person that you are engaging with is also a very influential figure. My metric on who deserves debate and who doesn't has always been clear, okay? There are certain people who I do not entertain debating because I feel like it's I weigh out the negative consequences, right? Someone who is an otherwise irrelevant white supremacist, for example, who's trying to build a prominent platform for themselves, do not require someone like myself dealing with them. Because that would elevate their status. That would normalize their opinions to a certain degree. But if those opinions are coming from the likes of Charlie Kirk, those opinions are already normalized, right? Charlie Kirk's positions are so normalized that he was seen as a massively consequential advisor to the Trump administration.
Why now they have taken that step? I suppose time is a factor. This is a killer on the loose, an assassin on the run. So there is danger inherent in that, clearly. Although they say, and said this morning, the community is not at risk. They reckon this was a targeted shooting. But clearly, this individual has to be brought to book very quickly, and that will be the pressure that is on the FBI. The pressure that's on them now, of course, is to find out where he went. We see him climbing stairs in those images, presumably before the assassination. We are told that
we don't even know if that's the actual shooter or not, but like he does look groiped up, I will say. Like, he does look incredibly groiped up. He looks this is a very groiper posture. I mean, one might say that he is simply wearing this to blend in or whatever, but like this looks like a groiper, if this is even the guy, at least on a first glance, right?
he was running afterwards. There's no indication that we're looking at the aftermath in those two still pictures. He doesn't look like a man in a hurry, but yeah, you know, he could be anywhere. If he got into a vehicle, then that widens the scope of the manhunt considerably, and they will be sifting through not just video evidence, but also, you know, number plate recognition, eyewitness evidence as well.
Well, speaking during the 9/11 commemorations in New York, Donald Trump paid tribute to Charlie Kirk and announced he would be awarding him the Medal of Freedom.
Let me express the horror and grief so many Americans at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk have felt. Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people.
What does Groyper mean? For those of you who don't know, Groyper is a term for like far-right neo-Nazis on the internet. It's a self-described, it's a term that they call themselves. You know, Nick Fuentes fans and people like that. You know, people who just believe like esoteric neo-Nazi shit. Oftentimes they have a proclivity towards lolicon, hentai, things of that nature. A lot of Gen Z fascists are Groypers, and many of them also despise Charlie Kirk. I actually have a very interesting perspective on this. I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it in a second. What's really interesting about the way that a lot of people, a lot of Groypers themselves, including Nick Fuentes, like, is stating that they are so shocked and saddened, and that you know, maybe Charlie Kirk was assassinated by Israel. Maybe somehow Jews had a part in this. Is, I think, coming less from a place of making every conspiracy about the Jews, and more so from a place of probably recognizing the formative role that Charlie Kirk probably played in their political development, even though they became actively way more radicalized than Charlie Kirk and started despising Charlie Kirk in the process of said radicalization. Because Charlie Kirk, for all intents and purposes, was an extremist by every, by every metric, I would say, even though, you know, Donald Trump is president. So what does that mean? I don't know. But he absolutely was pro-Israel, pro-administration above all else, right? And a lot of people within the far right actually despise Charlie Kirk for it. Nick Fuentes made a name for himself by, you know, hitting Charlie from his right flank, right? Over and over and over again. Yeah, here it is.
Charlie Kirk will not debate me because I would devour him. I would eat him alive. And at the end of the day, that's going to happen one way or the other.
Now, I'm not making any inferences, by the way. I'm not saying that, like, you know, it was one of his boys that did this, right? I don't know. I have no idea. But I think a lot of right-wingers right now, like that InfoWars guy and many others, are fantasizing about this somehow being an assassination conducted by the state of Israel, because Charlie Kirk any moment now was going to turn on Israel, right? And that's the reason why they're basically fantasizing about for a bunch of different reasons. Like, some of them are fantasizing about Charlie Kirk seemingly turning on Israel because they wish it to be the case. Some of them are, or some of them are claiming that this is happening because some of them are claiming that Charlie was at any moment now going to turn on Israel because they just want to, like, shit on Israel and say that it's actually Israel's fault that he was assassinated. And others are doing that, I think, because they used to be fans of him, and now that he died, they feel bad about it, and they want to, in their own mind, make it seem as though he was actually on board with the cause, you know?
Whether he chooses to confront me or not, whether he has dignity and honor or not, it's just a matter of time. My ideas are already there. I've already impregnated your organization. I took Turning Point USA and I did. I took your organization, I took your baby, Turning Point USA, and I did.
I'm no Groyper, but this is a merit to the Israel narrative. I mean, there are a lot of suspicious elements involved in the Charlie Kirk assassination, okay? It does have, maybe it's just totally happenstance, totally random, but, you know, the way that this guy was able to line up a shot and create a little sniper perch for himself, unbeknownst to everybody else, and then was able to jet away by taking advantage of another person that was in the crowd that, like, redirected all of law enforcement attention towards himself. One shot, one kill, directly in the main vein on his neck. All of that stuff is strange, but I'm gonna be 100% for real. No, there isn't a random hunter who could probably hit that shot, even if it's a crazy shot. No, I know a lot of people are saying a random hunter could hit that shot, but I've heard this a lot, okay? But I don't think a lot of people understand. It's not the shot in and of itself, even though it's like relatively a relatively competent shot would be able to do would be able to do that. But like I think shooting deer is a little bit different than shooting a human being, especially for the first time ever. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it's actually the stakes, it's the pressure, and the setup. The very fact that he was able to get away, because you see this in school shootings all the time. People make this. People basically design how they're going to conduct a school shooting for a very long time, and then when the moment comes, obviously, like what Hasanabi is proven wrong and clings to his incorrect beliefs. You've been told repeatedly you were wrong. On what? Can't wait to see how long it takes for Hasanabi to start screaming at his chat for no reason. Acts like a baby. Chat says take a break. Hasanabi yells at chat. Classic. Oh, brother. Here, take a day off, dude. You're obviously a little unstable. My point was that planning something like this and then being able to successfully implement it is two entirely different things. And in most circumstances, like the shooter usually doesn't get away, he gets killed or kills themselves. So the fact that this guy was able to get away is unique, I think. The fact that they still haven't been able to find the shooter is unique. Now, it could be a matter of incompetence in law enforcement, okay? For sure. It could be a matter of incompetence in law enforcement, but there are some interesting aspects of this assassination, of this hit, that I think that make me feel like it smells weird. I don't think it was. I don't think Charlie Kirk was not assassinated by Israel or Trump or likely any organization. This happens with every assassination. Is it really that hard to believe an unhinged weirdo with likely incoherent politics shot someone famous? This happened for like a century. No, I agree. I don't disagree with you. I agree. I think that is like in order of priority, or in order of the hierarchy of like likelihood, I would say that it's most likely what it always is, which is like a dude, oftentimes right wing, who just has like indecipherable, incoherent politics and has took it upon himself to take matters into his own hands because like of a serious disagreement that they had. That's usually how these things go. But oftentimes these guys don't get away with it, you know?
Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd